Well, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Eating and drinking on the job again. That's
Well,
it. I'm
you
docking your
can't
pay.
you can't prove that I'm eating, but you can prove that I am drinking something.
All we have to do is wait for your lovely wife to come up and smack you in the back of the head again,
You mean the
and then we'll
captain?
have the proof. Yes, the captain
The
of your
captain?
ship.
Yeah, well, she abandoned the ship today and was not there. So,
She took that mutiny advice, huh?
yeah, she did something like that. Something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing out even before we go to the countdown because we didn't really schedule this much in advance. But we've got an interesting topic we want to talk about. So, a lot of people may not even know that we're online and doing a show. I did do an event deal and all that, but right now I don't see anybody showing up. I don't even see a Facebook notification. Do you?
I do not either, nor do I see a Twitter, or I didn't even get a Twitter notification. But that's fine if it's just us talking. Worst case, we'll just push it out there by itself. But
Yeah. Oh,
hey,
we are live. Hey, I did check that. We are live. That is a good thing. Okay. So, I'm going to kind of get started here sharing out. Do you know what time our guest is supposed to grace us with his presence?
well, I think when he got through having dinner and decides that he wants to join in and chat a little bit, but I this morning when I was heading to the crawfish ponds to fish, I was thinking about our show, our last two shows where we were talking about the sawmill and the port and the public private partnerships and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I came across an article that Scott McKay, and he is the editor of the Hayride, and it was about another bill that was about limiting the ability of the public to be able to get documents and public information requests and all that thing.
All right.
And so I thought, hey, be a good guy to get on and let's have a chat. Let's talk a little shop on that bill as well as maybe some of the other bills that it would seem are for less transparency in government.
Hmm. Well, yeah, we seem to be going down that pathway. And speaking of our guest, I see him down there in the green room. We have him in the timeout room for just a moment. Um, so, yeah, it just seems like that government is going backwards. And we even had a little bit of a debate between you and I on some of that. I think it was on what was it, about 2 or 3 Bossier Watch shows ago. And we had a little contentious, friendly back and forth. But anyway, all right. Well, let's go ahead and do the countdown and all that sort of thing. Get that out of the way, and we'll come back and then bring Scott in and just get started, and we'll ramble about whatever.
Let's do it to it.
All right, I'm going to hit the countdown. Folks, there are a couple of you watching. Go ahead and tag some friends, share out. Y'all kind of know the drill. Make some popcorn, make a stiff drink. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. And, well, we'll just get started. Here we go. This live broadcast is brought to you by Eagle Truck Center, soaring to new heights. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. SmarterGeek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. Well, right off the bat, I have to apologize, Mr. Lowry, before we bring our guest on.
Oh, I love apologies. It's just like eating crow, it seems like.
Yes, caw. Actually, that ad little deal that we had that plays should have Pelican Training and Consulting. That's the Ferris's there, and I have failed like a bad tech guy to get that corrected. And so I'm going to have to do that tonight after the show and cross it off my list.
Yeah, they are good people, especially when they stick their neck out for some of the stuff that we talk about on here. I mean, you got to give folks credit that are willing to step up to the plate because there's not a lot of them these days. And I will tell you, the guest we got coming on, I mean, some folks may remember him. I mean, there's no way that folks have not read some of his articles or seen some of his media over the years. He's not a guy who's ever scared to stick his neck out there either, Rex.
Well, he is not. So let me click this button and then let me click this button and assign him there, and presto.
Let's do something a little bit here to fit my head in your window.
Well, let me zoom back a little bit. I'll try to control. How's that? There, I got us all three about the same size.
It's all those brains.
For a minute there, I felt like I was a giant floating head somewhere. So, some people actually be flattered by that. I'm not one of them. So there's that.
So since the last time we talked, how many more books have you wrote?
Well, I don't. Let's see. Last time I talked to you guys, the Revivalist Manifesto had just come out, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's right.
I think your answer is 2. Because after that, I had a book that came out in the fall, which is Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. It's all Obama, which wasn't really a sequel to the Revivalist Manifesto. It was a little kind of a sidetrack to it, and largely explained why we need a revivalist movement in this country, which is the fact that Barack Obama is the single most influential political figure in America over the last couple of decades, and is continuing to be that because he's actually the guy in control of the Biden administration, which I think is, the most obvious thing that nobody will admit to.
You're so right. I hadn't thought about it that way. You are dead on the money. He actually is the most influential.
We can go on and on and on about like all of the the obvious tells that Obama's the guy really running the show, because obviously Joe Biden is not. But so like I wrote that book, and like every week or so it gets fresh again with a brand new news hook, because there's something that's happened that's clearly Barack Obama's doing. So and I think as we get closer to the Democratic convention, you might very well see concrete evidence that this is the case. And then most recently, I actually, and I've written 4 novels before, so this wasn't like a new thing for me, but I got a new novel that's out. It's called King of the Jungle. And it's set against the backdrop of something that might very well happen, which is the Venezuelans invading Guyana. Like that's back in the news this week. I don't know if you've probably seen headlines all over the internet about how the Venezuelans are actually mobilizing to invade Guyana. And the reason is there's this 200-year-old territorial dispute between those two countries. The western 2/3 of Guyana is a region called Essequibo, which is essentially everything west of the river Essequibo. And it's not populated. It's all jungle, but it's absolutely rich in mineral resources. And off the coast of Essequibo is something like 12 billion barrels of oil that Exxon and Chevron, and I think Sinopec is the third partner in this consortium, are like pulling something like 300,000 or 400,000 barrels of oil out of the sea bottom right now. And they expect that within a year, they'll be pulling 1 million barrels of oil a day out of the ground. There.
Wow.
Let me pause you.
What's that?
But that's got to be impossible, Scott, because, back when I was a kid and in school, we were taught the peak oil theory. I mean, we're going to run out of oil any minute now.
Yeah, nobody told nobody told ExxonMobil about that. Nobody told Guyana about it. But they may have told the Venezuelans about it because they are mobilizing to try to invade Guyana, which has a standing army of about 5,000 guys and is pretty much defenseless in this. So anyway, that's the backdrop to this. And the story is that there is a red-pilled billionaire out there who has had enough of fighting with the Joe Deadhorse administration here in America and all the regulatory crap that he has to deal with these guys. And he decides he's going to build a Shangri-La in the jungles of Guyana, thinking there's no way the Venezuelans would invade. Lo and behold, they do. And he's like, well, I got nothing but money, so let's go buy a bunch of military hardware and fight these bastards off. And so that's the book. It's a satire more than anything else. It's a send up of politicians both here and in Latin America and other places as well. And it's I think it's the best thing I've ever written. So really proud of it. It's got 4.9 stars on Amazon so far, which is something I'm really proud of. But
what's the best way? What's the best way for people to look up, all of your books? Is it just type in your name on Amazon, or do they need to know the exact book?
Yeah, that's the best thing. And you can get all 5 novels in both of the political books all sitting at Amazon. At reviver.com, which is our national conservative site that we've built, we're gonna there's plans in the works to turn Reviver into something of a book publishing house. And so we're constructing an online repository of my books and several other authors as well at that site. So, give me a 2 or 3 weeks and we'll have that up. But Amazon is really the best way to get it.
Dang, he's got us beat, Duke. We were just talking about spinning up Crawfish Watch, Cooking Watch, everything else we could think of. Scott, you're into a lot of stuff. That's impressive.
Crawfish Watch is legit. I think that, I definitely think y'all ought to do that.
I've already got the logo in mind.
Well, look, I found my salmon patty recipe. I found the one that I wanted. I'm good to go now. I just sent it to the wrong person. Because you're not going to cook for me. It's got to be the captain. So,
all right. What are we going to talk about?
In all seriousness. So before you joined in, Scott, I was telling Rex that, I was going to the crawfish farm to do my thing this morning, and I was perusing around, and I came across one of your articles pertaining to, I believe it was HB 461. And,
right.
It's the point you were making was it's a Democrat bill with all the Republicans all piled in on board with it. And this is another one of those, and I'm just going to generally describe it and then let you jump on it and correct me. But this is another one of these non-transparent bills. Am I correct about limiting transparency in government?
Yes. I mean, you could make an argument that the deliberations and negotiations between, an economic development organization and the corporations that they're trying to incentivize to come to the state, that you don't want public records requests interfering with that. There's scenarios, for example, if I am XYZ Corporation and ABC Corporation, who is my competitor, wants to or is negotiating with the state of Louisiana or Caddo Parish or whoever to get some tax incentives to build a plant that would make them more competitive than me, then what I'll do is I'll go pay off some journalist or somebody to pull a public records request on the deliberations and see if I can screw them up. Like, there is reason to think, okay, a bill like this could have some positive value. My 35,000 feet observation on this and like everything else is that a Republican legislature, especially one like what we have in Louisiana now, where you've got, Mandy Landry going to the floor of the House and, calling all these, you're just a bunch of out of touch rich white men, and Denise Marcel telling Kelly Dickerson, we're going to kill this bitch. I think referring to a bill of hers, but maybe not. When you have those kinds of behaviors going on, like my whole thing is, I think they should kill every single Democrat bill that doesn't have a Republican co-sponsor. Like, period. That's it. You can't pass a bill without Republican support anyway. So they should be in a position where they have to go to Republicans just to get bills to the committee in the first place.
And that brings that's really where I wanted to go, because I think you're dead on the money with what you're saying. I think there's some deliberations that if you're trying to get some company to come here, that you probably don't need to have out in the public. But the overarching deal to me is here we busted our ass to get, a conservative governor. We've got both sides of the legislature, and here again, why are we giving so much to the Democrats? I can't wrap my head around it, because it sure seems that way, and I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Well, and I don't know the specifics on HB 461. I do know this. Most of specifically the Democrat bills that have made it out of the House over to the Senate, pretty much all of them are like what they call department bills. Like, in other words, the insurance department will go to Representative so-and-so who's a Democrat and say, hey, look, this is our bill. It tweaks the, whatever insurance code or something, and we need to make this change. Could you carry this bill for us? And most of these things are not particularly controversial. So, the Democrat carries the bill and nobody cares. But my whole thing is, I don't want the insurance department going to Democrats when you don't need their votes to pass things. And I don't, if it's a department bill and so, who gets to pass bills that they author, whatever. No, make that Republicans. Don't give Democrats a piece of that pie. These things are these are easy achievements that these guys can have. Based on your roll call vote on this, this was something that, if it was a department bill, if it was LED that brought the bill or whatever, Stephen Jackson is not the guy that should get that bill. They should have given that to a Republican legislator to pass it. And maybe the most demonstrative, obvious example of this, and I certainly don't want to pick on these guys because they're friends of mine, but, Louisiana Right to Life and the Family Forum have given these abortion bills over the last however many years to Katrina Jackson. We got a Democrat who's carrying all of our abortion bills. And I know more than a few legislators who are Republicans who are irritated as hell about this because, she's okay on abortion, but she's terrible on every other issue. And when I say every other issue, I mean every other issue that Louisiana Right to Life, well, not them because they're kind of a single issue thing, but certainly the Family Forum, she's bad on all of their other stuff. Meanwhile, you've got all these Republicans who are good on everything that they want to do. Why wouldn't you reward those guys by making them the champions of these abortion bills?
Yes.
This happens a lot. And, it really sticks in my craw. It would be one thing if the Democrats get their butts kicked in last fall's elections and then to say, okay, well, we're going to do some introspection and we're going to go to the wilderness and kind of think things through and figure out how out of touch we are with the people of the state and try to come back with, an agenda that it's our agenda, but the people of the state aren't offended by, right? And that's not what you get at all. If you go on Twitter and you look at these people, they're absolutely unhinged over the fact that they got turned out into the wilderness. And so, like, I mean, I'm trolling these guys a little, and maybe I shouldn't, but my whole thing is wait a minute. You guys had a governor the last 8 years, and you ran off 250,000 people on net in out-migration in this state. Like, if you don't like the fact that we have turned you out of power, okay, and that we're going to do things the way we want to do it, which happens to be the way 65% of the people of this state want it done, then you should be the one that leaves, right? They hate that. I have as much right to stay here. It's like, well, yeah, it's true, but you don't have right to make policy because you lose elections. And like your guy Obama said, elections have consequences. And part of this is I don't think Republicans have quite understand the nature of American politics now as it is. And I have a hard time getting my head around it because it's so clear that we are no longer in, the era of consensus where, William F. Buckley, Republicans, and Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Democrats, could break bread and, we both want the same things, but we differ on the methods by which they're going to achieve. Barack Obama blew that away. You don't have that anymore. Now,
I got to reel you in because we're not ready to talk about Mike Johnson yet. But so, look, we're the limited government guys. That's who we are. That's what we're supposed to be about, and transparency in government and all that. But this wasn't the only bill. Heather Cloud, SB 482. She had a bill, and it was kind of sold out there as being, and I agree with it. We need to protect the governor and the security regarding himself and his family. I totally get that, but it went a little further than that, didn't it?
Can I jump in on this?
Yes.
Because there's a piece to this that nobody seems to understand. Okay. The Heather Cloud's bill came around for one reason only. And in a vacuum, that wasn't a good bill. Okay. Like in a vacuum, you really don't want to say, okay, we're not going to have public records capability against the executive branch. But what's happening is you have these Soros-funded nonprofits, which are trying to bombard the executive branch with public records requests, which are very labor intensive to deal with. And the whole point is they're trying to make big changes in how the executive branch works in Louisiana. And all of these public records requests that are beginning to mount are going to eat up so much of the man hours that they have over there that they're not going to be able to do the agenda. And that's what all of this stuff is being put forth to do. So the point was to change the law to give them a little breathing space so that they could actually, make the changes that they want to make. They've got departments they want to reorganize, and they've got all these other things that we as conservative voters particularly want done, but the thing about the other side is, those guys don't play fair. I mean, you see this with Trump and the trials, like the lawfare and everything else. They will use every method they possibly can to create trouble for our side when we try to, break their rice bowl. And so that's what was underlying this.
Let me break in for a second. If I'm hearing you right, and I'm not saying you agree with this, but the justification for trying to get this bill through was so that the administration, being Jeff's administration, would be less labor intensive, would be more efficient?
Well, I don't know that I would put it that way. Okay, like
they would have less work to do. I'm just playing devil's advocate here because, I'm a big proponent of full transparency. I think that there should be no secrets, with the exception of some serious security, deal. The governor's planning on going to something or whatever, and they don't want that to get out beforehand for security reasons. Other than that, I'm full transparency. So that's why I'm asking. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, and I don't disagree with you as a general matter, Rex. Okay, but what is being defended against somewhat proactively and somewhat reactively, because Remember, Jeff came from the Attorney General's office. And for 8 years, they did this to him when he was AG. Okay. They just absolutely got the Advocate and the Louisiana Illuminator and some of these other left-wing publications bombarded the AG's office again and again and again with public records requests that were largely meaningless and mostly, kind of fishing expeditions looking for embarrassing stuff, most of which had very little, public information value. Okay. And it was all a harassment campaign. It was all about, okay, I'm going to tie up your staffers working on our stupid public records requests. And then we're going to talk about how the Attorney General's office doesn't get anything done. Okay. And so he becomes governor. And now you've got, it's a writ large situation. And they're abusing the public records laws in order to gum up the administration. That's the justification of this. Now, what you can say is, well, but everything they do is, within the public's purview. And I don't disagree with you there, but what do you do to protect against the kind of abuse that these guys, who have unlimited funds, by the way, right?
Have a solution.
This is Soros people. Go for it.
The solution is you just proactively go ahead and make all the records publicly available. And when you do a public records request, here you go. Huh?
I know, but they need records come out.
Correct. But if the problem is that they're having staffing issues, and I'm saying that very generically, obviously, and a little facetiously, but if the problem is if they're having staffing issues, well, they may as well get a group of staff together and assign them. Their sole task is to make all public records available within X number of days, whatever that reasonable time period is. Somebody wants a public record, it's just like having the Louisiana checkbook or whatever they call that deal. Here's where you go for all the records for the governor's office, and here's the legislature's office, so on and so forth.
I don't know that
you just screw government when you do that. So, and I rather not.
Yeah, I mean,
and look, some of this is deliberative. This is these guys trying to figure out how to make policy, sitting in a conference room, and all of a sudden, we're going to give the public access to that right away. They haven't even made any decisions yet. Bear in mind, judicial and legislative deliberations are not subject to public record laws. So, if you're going to make everything available, then you can go that route. And that's the argument. I don't know that that's practical. And a lot of this things underground. So I don't know that there's a really good policy solution to this when what you're trying to do is ward off someone trying to abuse the status quo, which is, when you have these left-wing foundations that have a literally unlimited amount of money for purposes like this, and are paying some of these publications to do these public records requests. They're creating a business model in this, which, that's not the reason that public records laws exist. So, I'm open to whatever solution somebody can come up with to, I don't know about punish the abuse of this, or at least, but defend against it.
I can see the point that you're making. I can see that, and I understand what Rex is saying, and I agree with wanting more transparency and put it all out there. And I agree with that. But what I would say is at fault here is Jeff and their group. They should say that to the public. I've not heard that. You're the first person that I've heard that. Why not just say to the public, look, these freaking left-wing wackos are trying to lawfare us just like they did Trump so that we can't get anything done. We're not going to allow that to happen. Say that.
Well, let me just put it this way. You and I are in direct concert on that opinion. And it's been shared with the powers that be. But sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't.
And look, for the record, I want to make sure that I'm clear. I completely understand your point, Scott, which is the point, the Jeff's office and all that and the governor's administration are trying to make. I completely understand that point, but I just wanted to make sure that I get the counterpoint in there so we could have a little discussion about that.
Well, and like I said, in a vacuum, I don't like that bill, right? I mean, this is a bill to deal with special circumstances, and one of the ways they maybe could have changed that was just to sunset it after 3 years, right? We're going to get some breathing space to go and make the changes we want to make, and and then in year 4, if you guys want to bombard us with public records requests, then so be it. Maybe that would have been give me a temporary reprieve from the lawfare so that I can get some things done. That maybe could have been a compromise. I don't know.
Rex and I, he alluded to it at the start. We had a debate, and I don't know if we disagreed or if we disagree, but we didn't agree when we were debating it. But I found a clip that was talking about, how government, because I'll just say it, I feel like our government's broken from the top to the bottom. It's broken across the board. And one of the things it points to, it says that where we went wrong was originally in Congress. And in the beginning days of Congress, when they deliberated, it was closed to the public. There was no lobbyists. There was nobody in there. Our representatives, they went in a room and they locked horns. They beat it out of each other till they come to a conclusion, and then the public knew. But when that changed, that's when you allowed the outside influence in, and everything changed after that. I mean,
right.
We didn't have to have transparency then, and things worked. I would contend that we did a better job back then than we do these days. Maybe we need to go back to that.
Well, demographically, psychographically, I think the country is a lot different than it was. Look, we brought in direct election of senators. That fundamentally changed the nature of how the Republic operates. I mean, prior to, which one was that? The 17th Amendment passing. The state legislature would elect the senators. Okay. And the senator's job was to represent the state of Idaho or Louisiana or Massachusetts, like the state. When I'm not saying the people of the state, the state, they represented the state government, and which is a different, that's a different portfolio than what you have now, because like the federal government's going to go and impose a mandate on the states to do X. And these guys are like, no, my guys would kill me if I voted for that, right? Whereas if you're, you just get elected by in a statewide election, it's like, well, yeah, it's, whatever, free stuff that I can vote for my people, then I'm all about it. But when you're representing the state government and it's like, wait, you want us to administer this program? Like, this thing is going to suck. It's going to be a failure, right? Without the 17th Amendment's passage, you would have never had Medicaid. Right? Because Medicaid's a freaking disaster. Everybody knew Medicaid was going to be a disaster when it was passed, and it's a disaster. And it's an even bigger disaster now that they've expanded it with Obamacare. Of course, the mainstream media will never tell you that. But that's what you get with a direct election of senators. So, we're probably a little bit more transparent. If you watch C-SPAN, what you realize is what we really are is performative now. And Republicans are guilty of this as much as Democrats are.
Amen.
And some of it is great, actually. Like, I watched Elise Stefanik yesterday or the day before walk a witness through a discussion of the Trump trial, and it was magnificent. But on the other hand, it's, like, you got these people taking turns in these hearings, going back and forth, just bashing the hell out of each other. And it's pretty obvious you're never really going to get anything done when they're up there just trying to score points. But I think that's indicative of politics as a whole, right? Like, we get it here in Louisiana. Mandy Landry goes to the well or the podium in the House floor, and all she's doing is trying to create a YouTube moment. Like, that's all she's doing. and it drives the rest of them crazy. They want to kill her. And these committee hearings, particularly now that the Democrats know that they don't have any power, I mean, it's one thing after another. These guys are out there trying to score points. And so, like, politics is now a really, really, really bad circus. And in that, it's, I guess you need transparency, but do you really want it? This is the question. Because we see too much as it is.
Do you get it anyway? I don't think we don't get transparency.
No,
we don't have a clue.
You know what they want you to know. That's all you get.
Yeah, and let's see, what was the recent security deal? And I know you said you didn't want to get into he who walketh on water just yet necessarily, but remember he went into the magic booth one way and came out of the magic booth the other way, right?
Well, that's a great way of saying it, in my opinion. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good.
Why is nobody in Louisiana criticizing him? I mean, it took Moon Griffon almost 2-3 weeks to get after him.
Wait, who are we talking about again?
Walk on water.
Oh, Johnson. Okay. Well, I'll do it like this. I will confess to being something of a Mike Johnson apologist. Okay. He wrote the foreword for my book. All right. I've been friends with him for a while. And I'll say this. He's got 218 votes, which is like not a majority in any real sense of the word. There's only so much you can do with 218 votes. Now, having said that, Mike has not taken enough arrows for the conservatives in the House to suit my liking. He has taken arrows for Donald Trump, which needs to be kind of thought of. For example, he didn't bring the border up at the end of the day, as a requirement in order to get this foreign aid stuff done. There's a reason for that, which is Trump didn't want him to. Trump would rather have the issue than a less than perfect solution at the border now. Okay. And which makes sense, right? Like why would I negotiate, especially not any of this garbage that Mitch McConnell had that guy Langford bring up? Why would I try and do a deal on the border that I have to get agreement from Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer with now?
So the timing's not right.
Well, look, and I mean, this is not my argument. This is the argument that's been made, that Johnson's made, and actually Trump's people have made kind of on the sly. That look, let's just wait until January and fix the whole thing. That's not a terrible argument. Okay. The Ukraine thing, like Ukraine's going to lose that war.
You know why I'm laughing?
Same song, second verse, could get better, going to get worse.
I'm sorry. Do you know why I'm laughing? Let's wait till January. Oh, well, let's just count on the elections. We're going to count on the elections.
How'd that work for us in 2016? We had the White House, the House, and the Senate. How'd that work? And
we just doled out all this money to the FBI and the Department of Justice so that they can double down.
I don't like the FBI stuff. Really don't like the FISA renewal piece where they get to do warrantless surveillance. Didn't like that at all. Again, though, and I mean, this. I got this from Trump's camp, and believe me, Trump wants to reform FISA in the worst way because I mean, look what they
signed off of the renewal as president. He can say one thing and do another. I know you're not speaking for Trump himself, and I'm voting for Trump again.
Right, again.
It's bull crap.
But again, if you're okay, let's say you don't renew FISA, and now there's a deal that's going to be made, because there's going to be a deal that's going to be made. You're going to have FISA in some form or fashion.
Well, yeah, once it's
So if
there,
you
you can
don't
never
make
get rid of it.
Well, I would like to get rid of most of it, but I mean, certainly we ought to be able to surveil foreign bad guys, right?
Foreign bad guys, I agree. You can do what you want to the foreign bad guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and that was the whole point of FISA to begin with, and then obviously you had this kind of mission creep that turns this thing septic. But if you're going to try to fix that, okay, again, if you do it this year to actually pass something, you got to get Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden to agree. All right. Do I want a FISA reform that Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden agree with? I guarantee you the answer is no. Like whatever they agree with is going to be bad. Okay. I mean, Chuck Schumer is absolutely the stooge of the intelligence community. All right. I mean, you'll remember Chuck Schumer was the answer. Oh, the CIA will screw you 10 ways to Sunday. Like he was the guy that openly said that the intelligence community and was happy about it, that the intelligence community was completely off the chain. He already, like he said it and he was like bragging about it. So do I really want Chuck Schumer to have a say in reforming FISA? The answer is no. And so if you don't pass a FISA renewal, that's a must pass bill, right? Like you have to pass something. The question is what you're going to pass. And if you're going to do this now you're in there negotiating with Biden and Schumer to try to pass something. Like the whole point is, as much as we sit there and go, oh, yeah, sure, kick the can down the road, if you can win all three of them, White House, House, and Senate, you probably do want to kick that can as far down the road as you possibly can. Let me get back to the Ukraine thing real quick, and I don't want to get into a big deal because believe me, I could do a whole show with you guys on how stupid everything about Ukraine is. But
you got that right.
They're going to lose that war. The question is when they lose it and how they lose it. Your best solution is that they would lose it at the peace table next year, right? Because what they could do is they could lose it on the battlefield this year. And guess who gets blamed if that's the case? The Republicans. Okay? And we're not at fault on any of this stuff. Ukraine was never our deal. That's Joe Biden's deal. He should wear everything having to do with Ukraine. But when they keep making these funding requests to Congress, every time you say no, it then becomes your deal. And that's a crappy political situation, but you don't have the power to change it, right? All you have is this tiny little majority in the House, and you don't even have that because you have, I mean, when they passed the Ukraine funding measure, you had 100 and something Republican, half the Republican caucus voted for it. So you don't have the numbers to stop Ukraine. And if you did, you'd get blamed for it when the Ukrainians get overrun by the Russians, which is eventually going to happen, okay? I mean, the Ukrainians are out of reserves now, and the Russians have 500,000 troops getting ready to mount an offensive this fall, all right? So, like, you know, you're going to wear Ukraine instead of Biden wearing it, or you're going to throw $60 billion into the mix that may help you win the election because it's not your fault when Ukraine loses now that you funded this stuff, which is a really crappy political calculation, okay? But I can't shoot it down. Like, I can't think of a different thing. Now, and I don't want to go too much further into this, none of this should be on the table because we should have been at the peace table between Ukraine and Russia a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Okay. I mean, this whole thing has been so badly mismanaged and is so stupid. It'll blow your mind the more you think about it. But this is something that Democrats do all the time. I call it weaponized governmental failure. You usually see it when they run a city into the ground and they drive all the middle class voters out of that city into the suburbs. And so all that's left is like, rich liberals and freaking dirt poor welfare recipient, core Democrat voters. And then, they profit off of that. So they get federal dollars to replace the tax base that they've run off. But that weaponized governmental failure is a feature of everything the Democrats do. They screw up the governance and then they find a way to make it either somebody else's fault or they benefit from it. It's like the only thing these guys are good at. And the Republicans have not figured out a way to ward this off. And it's important that we do.
Well, just like the transparency bill, you know, in Landry's office should have been out there telegraphing to their base that, hey, here's why we're doing this. It's the same thing here. I don't know that after the election, if Ukraine is still there and they're able to get, you know, Trump is able to get a peace agreement with Putin at that time or whatever, and they walk away with face, the election's over. You're not going to win on the fact that we may have peace after the election. Right now, people are going to vote, especially our base is going to vote on how much money we're pissing away over there on a bunch of damn crooks. That's whatever. And our base is looking at the whole picture saying, all our team, they just lay down. They don't fight. That's what our team is saying.
Remember the other piece to this, though, and this goes way back, more than a year ago. Your glorious leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, said that funding Ukraine was the number one priority for the Senate Republican caucus. Okay, and consistently stuck with that, right? That stupid James Lankford border deal, all of that was designed to pressure the House into funding Ukraine, okay? So, like, and this is the thing. McConnell has been the leader of the Republicans in the Senate since 2007, and he has sabotaged the House Republicans and the conservatives within his own caucus, not consistently, constantly, ever since then. And nobody's ever had the balls to turn this guy out. You know, I mean, if he falls down one more time, that problem probably takes care of itself. Right. But, you know, like, there's nothing you can do because this guy is busy. Now, he's not stabbing you in the back. He's slashing your back open again and again and again. Look, at one time, John Boehner was considered a conservative hero. When he got to be Speaker of the House, I mean, you know, people were ecstatic because they were like, this guy has been a warrior for, you know, a long time. He's been one of the good guys. He was there with Newt and he did, you know, all the things, and this guy's been great. And like 4 years later, we couldn't stand John Boehner because McConnell had rolled him over and hung him out to dry so many times that he gave up. He said, I can't win. And so, you know, he just had to go along. I mean, the transformation of Boehner should have been held at McConnell's feet, and he should have been, there should have been consequences, and yet nobody has the stones to do anything about it. So
and then
you hit
then
the
you get
nail
Paul
on the
Ryan.
head.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was going to say, he said you hit the nail on the head, and I was going to say, and then you get Paul Ryan, it just throws in with him.
Well,
Ryan saw what happened to Boehner, and Ryan was like, well, that's not going to be me, right?
And by hitting the nail on the head, you've mentioned it several times that we have nobody in Washington, D.C. on the Republican side, and certainly not on the, well, I don't know, I might argue you might have a few on the Democratic side that have a set of balls to do anything. They just don't. It's the whole uniparty thing.
The Democrats have plenty. I mean, you know, like, you know, the difference between bad Republicans and bad Democrats or destructive Republicans and destructive Democrats is that when the Democrats are destructive, they're doing their job. They're good at their job. These guys are trying to destroy the country. When the Republicans, you know, when they do it, it's generally because they have no idea what they're doing. You know, it's like the old line is the GOP is the stupid party and the Democrats are the evil party. And that's one of the truest things that's ever been said about American politics. You know, I like the Republicans to be a little more evil and a lot less stupid. But, you know, apparently that takes time to fix, I guess.
Well, then let me ask you a question then. If Republicans need to be a little bit more evil rather than stupid, and maybe I shouldn't say evil, just a little slicker or cunning.
How about clever? Yeah, cunning. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, how about that new congressional map? Is that cunning? Is that clever?
Well, the best that could be said maybe was that it was a 4D chess move that didn't work. Which was to, make the most Rorschach test congressional district you could, that was going to fall afoul of the courts, put the issue up the appellate chain, delay it long enough that you could have a 5-to-1 map this fall, as at least as an interim thing. Trump wins the election. The Trump DOJ dumps their role in the original lawsuit, and then the original plaintiffs don't have standing because there was an Eighth Circuit case about this that basically said groups like the NAACP don't have standing to bring these Voting Rights Act challenges. And so if you could line all those pieces up and then knock them down, you'd get a 5-to-1 map. Or alternatively, and you could kind of see this coming, you had that 3-judge panel up in Shreveport say, you got to have a map by June 3rd or we're going to draw the map. And nothing would make me happier than to see that 3-judge panel draw that map, because you'd have a 5-to-1 map, if not a 6-0 map. But, it didn't work because the Supreme Court comes and gives a stay, which essentially means, I don't know that's 100% true, but probably that you're going to have to, that map that you're showing on the screen is what we're going to vote this fall, which makes Cleo Fields a congressman, barring an upset that maybe Garrett Graves could pull off if he decided to run in the 6th district, which he currently represents. And I don't know what his camp's thinking is right now. I've heard that he's leaning toward Clay Higgins' seat or Julia Letlow's seat. Whatever.
Well, the last one, and I'll get your comments on that one. So you're a South Louisiana guy. We're North Louisiana guys, and we're not all happy about the Supreme Court districts in Louisiana. Way this is fixing to go. We feel like we're fixing to get screwed up here. What does the South Louisiana guy say?
Well, back in that redistricting session, Alan Seabaugh had a bill that I thought needed to get picked up and run with. And hopefully at some point in the future, this will be done, which is you can do the districts in the Supreme Court however you want to do them. But those are statewide seats, right? The Supreme Court justice from Shreveport doesn't just decide cases in Shreveport, right? He decides cases from all over the state. And as a result, the proper electorate for a Supreme Court seat is the state of Louisiana. So maybe you might have, a district and the candidates have to come from inside that district. And that's fine because that gives you a little bit of a geographical spread that you can run from. But, the voters should have the right to vote to affect the races of people who affect them. And like this would be something you could do for all of the judicial races. In other words, like they break these judicial districts up into sub-districts, and those are drawn for racial bean counting purposes. And so you get judges like this woman, Ebony Johnson in Baton Rouge, who cannot run a case in front of her court without massive reversible error. She's
so you're saying she would be a perfect fit in Georgia, is what you're saying. I get it. Or New York.
She'd probably be a fit in New York. But she's dropping the N-word in a judicial transcript last week, screaming at the DA about, some prosecutor, you trying to get all the N-words put in jail. And it's like, wait, you can't, you're a judge.
Wow.
You can't talk like that. Wow. And then, but you go look at her district, and it's like it's an 80% black district in a 50-50, 19th JDC, and they did this for specific reasons of, well, we need to have more black judges, and so they draw these districts, and it's like, like the whole East Baton Rouge Parish should be who votes on the judges in the 19th JDC. Because if you have a court case that goes in front of the 19th JDC, they're not going to ask you what part of the parish you live in and then assign you to the judge from your neighborhood. It doesn't work like that. You go in front of a judge that comes up from the entire district. And so the entire district should vote on every one of these judges. And I think the Supreme Court is the same way. Their district, or at least that they affect, is the state. So the state's voters should do this. And if that means that the 7 Supreme Court justices are all conservative Republicans, because that's who won statewide, then so be it, right? Like, the idea that you have to do set-asides for freaking black politicians is the most asinine thing I ever heard, right? I mean, like, do black people get to vote? Yes. Are there any impediments to black people voting? No. Do black people get to run for office? Yes. Are there any impediments to black people running for office and winning? Well, they need to get a majority of the people to vote for them. Like, will people vote for black candidates? Yes. In fact, there are black Republicans getting elected nowadays, right? I mean, Byron Donalds could very well end up the vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party, and so could Tim Scott. So, like, I don't want to hear, oh, white people will never elect a black politician, so we have to make sure that we have racial set-asides, not just for black, government contractors. We have to make black politicians a protected class, which is what this congressional redistricting thing is, and the Supreme Court. It's utterly idiotic that we allowed this thing to be the case.
I can tell you the reason, because if everything that you just said is true, that means we have to take the word disenfranchised out of the lexicon of U.S. politics now. And we can't have that.
Well, let's just consider it this way. So, in the initial lawsuit that Shelley Dick, who's the communist Obama judge in Baton Rouge that caused all this trouble, essentially what is said here is that a congressional district map that was drawn up in 2011, which Obama was president at the time, and Eric Holder was the attorney general. Eric Holder didn't have a problem with that map. DOJ signed off on that map. So Eric Holder didn't have a problem with that map. The one they passed in 2022, I guess it was not substantially different from the map from 10 years earlier. It was pretty much the same map. So a map that Eric Holder didn't have a problem with, Shelley Dick has a problem with. And now nobody knows who their congressman's going to be. All right? Like, that's what's going on here. And you had to pass a map that has Shreveport and Baton Rouge in the same freaking district, so that Shelley Dick's racial freaking bean counting could be satisfied. This whole thing is nuts. It's so patently unfair and ridiculous. And you wonder why people have no faith whatsoever in our political institutions anymore. It's crap like this.
That's exactly stupid. Right.
And the thing is they don't care that they're destroying the public's respect for these institutions. They don't respect these institutions. These people are radicals, and they want to destroy America as founded. And so they have absolutely no limiting principle as to how much damage that they will do to this stuff. Shelley Dick wanted more Democrat Congress people in Louisiana, and she didn't care what she had to do to get it. So I'll throw away a map that I have no business throwing away, and I'll put this up the line. And then, of course, the reason you have this problem is there was a Supreme Court case out of Alabama.
Right.
And here's the thing. Alabama has 28% black population. Louisiana's got 32%, I guess it is. But the demographics of that are very different, the vast majority of black people in Alabama are either in Birmingham or they're in Montgomery and Mobile, which 7 congressional districts you could very easily make 2 pretty contiguous majority black districts in Alabama.
Right.
They decided to go whole hog. Like, we're going to go 6-1, right? The Alabama state legislature, like, let's see if we can squeeze an extra seat. And their map, their 6-1 map was a Rorschach test. Okay. Like, they gerrymandered the hell out of it. That was like, you could legitimately look at this and say, well, y'all went a little too far. All right. So fine. The Supreme Court throws that thing out. Our demographics and the way our population is distributed in Louisiana is totally different from the way it is in Alabama. Okay. You don't have 2 pockets that are big enough to house a congressional district of majority black voters. I mean, you had to do a Rorschach test for Troy Carter's district for the 5-1 map. Like, that thing snakes from Orleans Parish all the way up to North Baton Rouge. Okay.
Right.
Like, that's not a contiguous map. And it doesn't satisfy communities of interest because people in New Orleans and people in Baton Rouge, I mean, they're both Southeast Louisiana, but they're different markets, and they don't see themselves as one corridor at all. Okay. So now you're going to have 2 of these districts, and you got Shreveport, Alexandria, and Baton Rouge all in the same district, which is nuts. Okay. That's nuts. Nobody in Shreveport thinks that their, issues that involve their community are anywhere even remotely close to the issues that involve Baton Rouge. There's no community of interest there whatsoever. And they did this so they could screw Garrett Graves, and I get it. But the whole point is you're going to have to do something like that to get a second majority black district. Like, you'd have to, because the black population of the state is in all of these different markets. There's a chunk of black vote in Shreveport, some in Monroe, some in Alec, a little bit in Lafayette, a lot in North Baton Rouge. It's most of Orleans, which Orleans Parish is about half a congressional district. And I think it's 58-42 is Orleans Parish's population. It's not a, completely black city anymore. It's much less black than it used to be after, following Katrina. So, it's very, very difficult to build anything other than a Rorschach test of a congressional district map to get 2 majority-minority districts. So we used to not have a problem with the understanding of this, but you put Obama judges on the bench, and now you have this.
So how many years do you think before we'll go back to the drawing board and we get something else in place, and then we'll run it back up to the Supreme Court again, and they'll say, yeah, you know what, we're good with that map too?
I don't know. I mean, as of now, unless we have a really good, next 5 years, the chances are outstanding that Louisiana is going to have 5 congressional seats instead of 6. So are you going to then have a 3-2 map? Because I can tell you, the people of this state are not going to stand for that. It'll be a 4-1 map, and probably Cleo Fields' district's going to go. And we'll be right back in court, and they're going to say, well, no, if we have 32% of the population, that rounds to 40% of the population, so we should get 2 of the 5 districts. And hopefully nobody buys that logic, but as of right now, all of the judges in Baton Rouge who are going to hear that case initially they're either Clinton judges or Obama judges. And they will absolutely go the partisan Democrat way, and they will demand a 3-2 map. So there's no end in sight on this. We're going to be at this forever.
Wow.
Hey,
the only way you fix this, I'll tell you how. The only real way to fix it is you start electing black Republicans to positions of some prominence in the state, whether it's mayors or state legislators or a public service commission or something like that,
or state treasurers.
Maybe.
Small little history lesson, and I'm pulling this out of left or right, as the case may be field. Do you know who Antoine Duplessis was?
he was the state treasurer during Reconstruction, maybe, or something like
Yes.
that.
He was also the first black
PBA's
state
picture, who
treasurer.
was the
Elected
yeah.
in, let me make sure my math is right. He was nominated in 68 and elected in 1870, and reelected in 1874. And interesting, he was also one of the largest slave owners who was also black.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he was a Republican.
You bunch of white
Yeah.
racists, y'all, bringing up stuff like that.
No,
We're talking about race. I figured I'd throw that out there.
If you start electing here and there some black Republicans, then you start having the scenario of, well, if you guys demand, a 3-2 map or a 4-2 map or whatever, we're going to draw this thing so it's 50.1% black, and it'll be a black Republican that wins. And at that point, the game becomes no fun for the Democrats, because by doing this, they are, like insisting on, well, we got to have 2 of these. And it's like, yeah, and half of your congressional delegation is going to be Republicans. And what are you going to do with that? Like that's the only way you get past this and fix it, you develop a cadre of, black Republican politicians who can win. And we're slow to the uptake on this, because there's lots of other states that have done a better job of developing black conservatives as political figures. Like in Virginia, they've got Winsome Sears, who's phenomenal. Right. And in North Carolina, like Mark Robinson's about to win the governor's race over there. Byron Donalds in Florida. I mean, there's a bunch of people that fit this. We just haven't developed any in Louisiana yet. But once we do, I think you have, and the demographics or the voting demographics are starting to change, so that this is more real, right? Like Trump is polling above 20% with blacks, and he's polling like close to 40% on some of these polls with black men. So like you're gonna get black Republicans in. It hasn't started to happen in Louisiana, but it will. And once that happens, and you start having like, nope, we got black politicians too. Like that. This game is fun for them.
That kind of goes to what I've talked about many times, Duke, which is they, being the Democrats, are literally breeding faster than we are as Republicans. And I think you're spot on, Scott. We need to be recruiting. Well, you can look at the population centers. Look at the blue maps.
Yeah, but on the whole, Democrats have fewer kids than Republicans do. On the whole,
well, they might, but they're sure voting that way once they get to voting age. But my point is,
what they're doing is they're importing an electorate from the third world.
I don't disagree with that, but again, they're breeding faster than we are. Whether they're actually breeding or importing them and skipping a couple of steps, obviously, in the breeding process, it doesn't matter. The point is still the same. But I agree with you 100%. And I've said this from day one. We as Republicans don't get that fact, at least in large part, and we're not recruiting enough like we need to be and convincing people. We just assume that people think the way that we do, and that's not the case most of the time.
One of my peeves about the Republican Party, and you get this, listen to Republican politicians all the time, they'll tell you this. Well, our voters don't want anything from government. Like it's a virtue. And, and my response to that is, it's because you suck. You need to give your voters something from government that they want. Yeah. This is how you make the sale and keep them coming out to vote. And so,
I want new bass fishing lakes. See, it's that easy. I'm a conservative Republican. I want new lakes.
Well, there you go. They're debating these ESA bills in the legislature, right? Particularly the state Senate. And ESA essentially is money follows the child in education, and none of these people understand the real dynamics to this. Okay, and I'm screaming. I was like, look, okay, so what you did was you did these vouchers 10 years ago, right? Which is essentially you got the suburban middle and upper middle class people paying taxes that are now going to fund private school tuition for inner city Democrats. Okay.
Right.
Who will stay inner city Democrats? All right. Their kids may go to a nicer school. They're not going to be so grateful that they start voting Republican. If that's what you thought was going to happen, you screwed that completely, because it absolutely was never. Because the more you do for these people, the more the people that run these cities into the ground, okay, are going to spout racism, because it's all they've got, right? Your solutions actually work a little bit, but they don't get to find out about the solutions, because all they know is those Republicans in the suburbs, they're a bunch of racists and they hate you, okay? Because it's easy to do that. Now, ESAs, it's a totally different dynamic, and it's one that actually works. Voucher's a political loser because you're paying the other people's constituents money, right? Why would you do that? Make them your constituents before you pay them anything. With ESAs, that same suburban mom who lost her mind over the fact that her tax dollars were going to go to pay for these inner city kids to attend her kid's school, right? Okay, now you say, no. I'm paying you. You send your kid to Parkview Baptist in Baton Rouge and the tuition is $12. I'm going to give you $8. And she goes, woo, that's a European vacation this summer. It's like, that's right. And remember where you got that from too, right? We just gave you a tax break that covered most of your kids' tuition and made your personal household in a much better shape. It's good policy, okay? We're putting kids in better schools, but what you can do in every election cycle from now on is when you run candidates, you say, you see that Democrat over there? You put that guy in office, and he's going to come get your $8,000 and give it to the teachers' unions. You know what? Never vote Democrat.
You know what I'm itching to pull a trigger on, don't you, Duke?
I do. And I hate to break it to Scott, but just this afternoon, Luna and gang were all claiming racism and all that. ESAs are nothing but racist. This is
wait a
modern
minute.
day.
Let's let him listen to Jason Rowland. We've played this clip on Louisiana Watch before.
It's even racist in Bossier Parish.
Oh, yeah. Hold on a second. Listen to this.
Lower socioeconomic income students may struggle to find a place. And so it'll be selective admission. And in the purest sense, Mr. Corley and I, Bossier and DeSoto are still under orders. In my opinion, the ESAs are just another form of segregation. And it's a modern form of segregation in how we are dividing education across Northwest Louisiana.
So, see, it's segregation.
Deliver me from the ravings of white leftists. I mean,
that's the Bossier Parish School Board. Rowland is probably a Republican.
And what's that?
Jason Rowland's probably a Republican. That was the Bossier Parish School Board superintendent.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So, in other words, that's somebody protecting his rice bowl.
Bingo.
There you go.
But look, I don't want to hear it. Okay, you're creating a market in education. All right, that market's going to serve black kids just as well as it's going to serve white kids. Okay, it takes away this. You have to live in a certain zip code so that you can get in the right attendance zone and put your kid in a school that doesn't suck. All of that goes away. Okay, and more than that. What you're going to do is you're going to create different options for people to seek education. You got something like 11% of the education market now is various forms of homeschooling, which, homeschooling is not just mom stays home and they're at the kitchen table with the kids going through book. That's not really how it works anymore. You have things like learning pods where these people all get together and hire a teacher who teaches their kids, or there's micro schools, which is, to me, I think where it's really going to come from. And like you think about that and you start to get really excited, because rather than having a bunch of unionized clock watchers working at a school that you have to put your kids in front of. You're going to get small business entrepreneurs who go rent, a storefront somewhere, or like one of these buildings that used to be like a law firm or something, fill a place with technology, computer screens and everything else, and bring in, 15, 20, 25 kids and give them customized individual instruction, right?
Bingo.
Leveraging technology, all this kind of stuff. And instead of making $50,000 a year and complaining about how much she hates her job, she's an entrepreneur, and we treat her as a professional. She's like hanging up a shingle like a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or an accountant or something like that. And she's making six figures and doing great. And almost assuredly, she's a Republican and she's in the marketplace. Guys like Jason Rowland are so afraid of something like that taking hold because it puts him and his six-figure salary right the hell out of business. So like, right. I don't care about his problems. I really don't. And I'm offended at the stupid, kind of rote language. Oh, it's a segregation thing. It's the opposite of that. It opens the freaking market up to everybody, right?
Yep.
And you'll have so many new school options pop when you do an ESA plan that's inclusive in this state. It's not even funny. And the thing is that if his schools are any good, he doesn't have anything to fear from ESAs because he's still the best option for most people.
That's right.
Good point.
That's right.
I don't give a damn about any of these people that want to act like, they know better than anybody else on education. When we're like so excited that we climbed up to 41st in the country in educational outcomes in a country where education is in free fall compared to all of the rest of the industrialized countries in the world. Like, you think you have a good school system in Louisiana and it's kind of barely average or a little below average nationally in a country that's below average compared to Singapore and the Czech Republic.
But Scott, they're including civics in their metrics now. So,
okay, I mean,
wow. But literally today in the hearing, they made a point to say we've moved up to 40, and we include civics in our metrics now.
Well, I mean, look, those are good things, but everybody knows you need revolutionary change in education. Everybody knows that. This is not some item for debate. I mean, talk to Brumley. And, I don't think Brumley's a bad guy. I think Brumley's actually about as good an education superintendent as you're going to get, but he has to protect that system. Like, that's his job, is to protect that system. And he's gone about as far as you could ever expect him to go in supporting school choice. Okay. And I commend him for that. You can't ask Cade Brumley to revolutionize education in Louisiana. Like, you can't ask him to do that. That's not his job. He didn't get paid for that. His job is to try to make the current system as good as he can possibly make it, and then to defend it from all comers. Okay? Which means, he's a friend, but he's not a particular ally, and you can't really treat him as that.
Well, so have we solved transparency and education and gotten rid of racism so far tonight, all in one fell swoop?
Not at all.
I say we put Scott for governor. We got to put him in charge. By gosh, he's got my support.
Hell no. You will never see me run for anything. I have seen far too much of the sewer pipe that you have to crawl through to get there. And frankly, most of the people who run are the people that you really don't want to have power over their fellow man. So, I will observe and criticize that process, but I will not participate.
It's so much more fun on this side.
We just get to throw all the daggers that we want to.
Well, we appreciate it as usual, Scott, and we got to do this more often. I love having these chats. You have your finger on the pulse of a lot of stuff, and like you enlightened me on some of that I did not know. I really didn't, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, guys.
Always good to have a good debate.
Thank you, Scott. Have a good night, my friend.
See y'all.
See ya. Well,
That
that is a
guy,
lot of information to process. He just
he is
rattles it off like he's like he's done this before.
he's always been like that.
Yeah,
First I remember the first time I met him. I mean, man, he was just and I mean, he's on the point on a lot of things.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm still kind of torn on the HB 461 deal because you know I see Governor Landry's viewpoint, which Scott was trying to articulate, and I don't disagree with it. Here's one thing I would say, and I didn't really get into this, but every time we talk about the Democrats have all this money that they throw at these things that we do, we've talked about this before. We're supposed to be the Republicans. We're supposed to be the rich business owners and
but
entrepreneurs and all
but
that
you
sort of thing. Why is it always the Democrats have more money to throw at problems?
but you know why it rubs you? Because it's the same reason that it rubs me a little bit. It rubs you because we have used the process a lot with public information
Right.
requests, and we haven't abused it. Now I can see people abusing it. I can see it, and I can
Well,
I
sure.
can see it
The
being
thought
used
has
as a
crossed my mind.
I I could see it being used as a tool, and I had never considered that the likes of the Soros groups using it as a tool to try to sink down an administration in government. That did not cross my mind, but I don't think like that. I don't think about doing things. I mean, when I'm going after something, I'm legitimately trying to get a piece of information because I believe there's something wrong there.
Well, look, back when the whole Cypress district debacle was going on, there was a comment made I think it was at one of the meetings anyway, and the comment was basically, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the comment was basically that, well, we're getting so many of these information requests, and that's part of the reason the lawyers' bills are so high, is because they have to run everything through the attorneys, and we're all sending in these public information requests. And I gotta say, the thought did cross my mind, weaponizing public information requests.
Well, I can tell you, I recently done a public information request for a friend of mine in Shreveport, and they have an interesting system. And his is going on. This one request is going on a couple of months, and from when I initially filed it, you can see all of the other public information requests. It's in the queue at like 489, number 489, which to me seems like it's probably a little low for Shreveport, but that's the number, and you can see them all in chronological order. Well, there is a ton of requests in there for things regarding incidents with vehicle accidents and legal proceedings, things like that. You can see a ton of that, but there's
Right.
not a lot getting down in the weeds on policy and things like that. I don't see that a lot.
Yeah. I know my suggestion for the solution was a little bit out there, and yeah, it would definitely be a logistical nightmare in the beginning. But then again, if you're having to spend the money and the resources to do it, you may as well do it to make it more efficient. But I don't know. Anyway, that's for a whole other debate.
Yeah, well, we're not going to figure it out. That's for all those guys and girls down there in the sewer to figure out for us. That's why they make the big bucks and not
Yes,
us.
and we're just stuck here being the political pundits that we are.
Well, that's all I have for tonight. And again, thanks to Scott McKay for coming on and being a guest with the
Yes.
Hayride. You guys should go to Amazon. He is an author, has wrote several books, and they are some good stuff there. Just look him up, Scott McKay, on
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah, we ought to share some. I'll go see if I can dig up some of the links and we'll share them out on our social media just to help him sell a few more pages. We've had a pretty good viewership going. We've been rolling around 20 plus people watching most of the night and a few comments. We appreciate all that. On the Louisiana Watch side, we don't generally roll as many comments up on the screen because we're trying to have guests and we want the conversation to focus mainly on the guests. So I do see the comments, even if we only showed a couple of them tonight. I want everybody to be aware of that. And we hadn't done one of these in a couple of weeks, but again, we're trying to have the Louisiana Watch format pretty much guest-centric when we can. So as we get guests on about various topics, we'll get these scheduled out and let y'all know. Like Duke said, we appreciate everybody watching.
All right. Y'all have a good night. See y'all next time.